Hello everyone and welcome to my video. Today I'm talking about past life, soulmates, and love connections. So I wanted to talk about this because it is something that does affect us in ways that maybe we don't realize or that are a bit more subtle than not. So the first point I'd like to talk about is multi-lifetime relationships come in several forms. So primarily what I am talking about here are our soulmates. We have multiple because the universe wanted to give us multiple opportunities for happiness. But there are several relationships that we can have that last several lifetimes and that have followed us into our current lifetime. These include soulmates, twin flames, true love connections on the positive side. So we can have connections that are both good and bad, and they affect us. Some of the negative ones, it's just in our lifetimes, we experience things together. And when they're very good things or very bad things, we develop strong emotional and spiritual bonds between us and the other person. And these bonds can draw us back together again in following lifetimes. And sometimes we can be drawn together multiple lifetimes or continuously onward. And frequently, what happens is that we relive the original situation that we encountered, but more about that in a moment. So, yes, they can take several forms. You have past life or multi-lifetime relationships with several people and many, many souls. And so what I listed are just a few examples. Soulmates are the most common, and they can be good or bad because our relationships are very nuanced and complex. Hello everyone, by the way. I hope everyone is well today, and thank you for sharing. So we're again, for anyone joining us, we're discussing past life, soulmates, and love connections. So these connections affect us in our present. An example is perhaps 5 or 6 lifetimes ago, you and another person engaged in a situation where, this is just an example, one of you was a noble person and the other one was from a lower class, and you were in love, but you couldn't be together because of your status, and the person who was a noble had responsibilities to care for those underneath him, like a lord cares for the people who work his land. So he had to marry someone of his class. And the situation went very badly, so the two of you had a soulmate connection that had lasted several lifetimes already, so that person's wife wasn't enough to keep you apart, but things ended badly and you both ended up dying tragically. How would that affect you now? Well, for example, say in this lifetime, you encounter the same person again, and you fall in love, and the person who is their spouse in that lifetime becomes an interloper again. And the person reacts as if they have to be with this other person. There's this sense of obligation, or you both feel shame about your relationship. That the keynote is that you feel emotions that are actually inappropriate to the current situation. We do live in a modern age, and there are a lot of things that are different socially about our relationships. So a sure sign that you are being affected by a past life love pattern is experiencing these overwhelming, strong emotions that maybe don't entirely match the severity or nature of the situation. They kind of seem over the top, yet you also can't help yourself, or the other people in the situation can't help themselves but to react as strongly as they are. And the reason is because they're actually reacting to the pattern and to the original situation that occurred. For example, 4 centuries ago, when it was actually would have been appropriate to respond with such strong feelings because there were all these societal pressures on the relationship. It looks like we have a comment. Hello, hello, everyone. All right. So, these connections affect us in our present. That is one way that they affect us, is that we respond or relive our patterns with our soulmates and our other soul connections from several lifetimes ago. And these can, sometimes they are positive, but it's important to be aware of, say, the negative ones, because some, for example, if you feel like there's someone you just can't get over, no matter how obviously bad for you they are, or how much the situation just is not ever going to work out, or other strong, good reasons why you should move on for your own sake, but you just find that you can't get yourself to do it, there might be a past life pattern at play. Or, like I gave the example earlier, if you or the other people in the situation are responding in an over the top way where the degree of emotion doesn't fit the situation, there may be a pattern that's being tapped into. Of course, there could also be a psychological pattern developed in this lifetime that is being responded to as well, and that's something to be aware of. But I have found past life connections to frequently be an influence. So, how do you know someone is a past life connection? Let's talk about that for a moment. At times it can be a bit tricky because it depends on how connected to yourself and your own sense of truth you are, how much you allow yourself to validate your own feelings and not be talked out of it by others. But some of the ways you can tell when you are engaging with someone with whom you have a multi-lifetime relationship or a soulmate. Of course, there's the they feel really familiar, there's things just click, there's a knowingness, or you just feel drawn to each other. You or both of you noticed each other long before you started talking in some instances. Other ways you can tell are extremely strong emotions or an extremely strong attraction that, again, may not be entirely corresponding to the nature of the situation or the two of you. I'm thinking about what I sense and what others have described to me about what they sense when meeting their soulmates. And it's a feeling that's a little interesting to try to articulate. It's like a deep being magnetized toward this person, or a deep comfort, sometimes a deep discomfort. Can feel a bit similar to the idea of being compelled or a compulsion. And just like an instant kismet, whether it's a negative or a positive one. So those are some of the things. Again, it can be a bit tricky. You have to kind of pay attention to your genuine, intuitive, and emotional response to the other person. Not just whether or not they're very attractive, but it's very cliche to just say you know. So I wanted to describe at least with a little more specificity, if that's a word, of what that is like. Now, how to resolve past life relationship patterns and live in the present. That's the other thing, is that, so you know that you've known someone not only in this lifetime but several lifetimes, and that you kind of tend to do the same thing again and again with each other. And sometimes it ends well, but more frequently it causes issues of some sort and at differing severities. For some of you, it's just like it's always difficult and you never quite get along, or there's unnecessary complications. For some of you, it's quite severe and quite bad. I do see some commentary. I will respond in just a moment. The first step is, of course, being aware of your pattern, because if you're aware of it, it's a lot easier to make a different choice in this lifetime than if you are not aware of it. And the thing is that you need to be willing to kind of dig deep in yourself, not just be aware of a pattern, but why that pattern exists and how it affects your soul, and to kind of talk yourself through it into making a different choice and processing those feelings to realize, now is not then, and that you have free will at every point, and so does the other person, maybe they don't realize it, to respond in a new way. And ultimately, responding in a new way could be having different reactions to the things they do this time around, or walking away, or making a totally different choice than perhaps you are inclined to make. You may really want to make the same choice again. And the reason we have patterns is that each time we're reliving it almost as if we're trying to do it differently this time. We're hoping that it just works this time, but we need to be at least a little conscious of that. Another thing you can do is healing work, whether it's through that conscious effort or through energy healing. Something I specialize in is in past life trauma healing, as well as resolving relationship cords and all of the residual energy and patterns that are attached to the cords. So not just removing the cords, but all the things that encompass that relationship. Removing those things can make it a lot easier to respond in the present moment and to break that pattern rather than just fighting against it on your own. So that is something I provide through consistent spiritual practice. It is something you can work through on your own as well. Let's take a moment to respond to some comments. I do have more to say. I just wanted to kind of cover it generally before moving along. All right. Some of you are commenting that you feel connections to some people in your life. Natalie asks, what is your opinion on love spells? Well, you can do them if you're targeting a specific person. There's a lot of things that go into it. Each magic is ultimately a contest of wills, so whoever has the strongest will win. So if they genuinely have no attraction to you whatsoever, it's unlikely to work. The spell kind of needs something to work its influence on. You can't actually force anyone to do anything. It's just a level of very strong influence or domination. It is technically a form of domination to make a person do anything, even if it's for a perceivably positive end. Ultimately, though, the person's will for themselves will win out. So I don't really have a strong moral stance on it. I just know the way that energy works. So I would say just be mindful and be sure. There's a lot of people who cast love spells on a specific person and they change their mind, but the person is energetically tied to you, so now it's hard to get rid of them. So I'd be absolutely sure. And from a practical standpoint, it's frequently better to attune yourself to the energy of love and to draw the person who is the best match for you. And if the person you want specifically is actually a good match for you, then the spell will draw them. So I guess it's just more like pointers about how it functions practically. All right. So Latrice asks an excellent question. If we walk away, how do we know that we won't have to go through all of this again next life? How do we know that we fixed our lessons? That is a pretty great question. The thing is that the soul does learn and develop, and it is my view that when we pass on, before we reincarnate, we kind of go over our life again to process everything that happened to us. So when we do reincarnate or go on to whatever's next to us, we are starting from a more stable place. So if you decide to make a new choice this time, it's not just your ego that learns, it's your soul. And especially if it's coupled with energy healing, the pattern is resolved. And so I do believe that the things we learn in our lifetimes carry with us. And if you're worried about doing it again, there are things you can do to prevent that. But typically, if you choose to disengage, the pattern is broken. In our world, our will is a ruling force. So the other person can't engage us in a pattern completely against our will. So that is just my perspective of it. Carolyn says, so easy to say forgive or forget. She talks about having someone's very stuck in her head. Do you want to come up here, sweetie? I'm talking to my cat. Um, I have had similar issues with specific past life relationship people in my life, and I've also worked with people with similar issues. Obviously, it's hard to put them out of our head when we do have that connection. There can be other factors as well, but I would say that is quite accurate to say that that is something that is kind of hindering your ability to move on. Come here, love. Come here, love. Can we be in my lap? All right, let us scroll down. How about a forget spell? I know them. I've seen them in action. And the trouble with forgetting spells or spells to make it so you don't feel anything about the person anymore is that to actually make it work where you actually could forget about a person, I've seen it in action and it's actually kind of terrifying. You have to cut out a part of your spirit because our memories are kind of interlaced into our souls. So to pull a memory out, you have to remove that chunk of you. You can do it, but ultimately you do lose part of yourself in that process. There are other ways to kind of accomplish the same end, and I'll get to that in a moment. Oh, hello, Tia Chris. Let's see. Scrolling down. All right, all caught up. Kristen says, I feel like I am drawn to narcissists and I don't mean to be. Why is that? Well, I've read you quite a few times specifically, and I think it's no shock to you, especially since you've chosen to join me for this video, that there is some past life patterns there. Again, of course, there are other factors. We do live in this world, and our experiences here affect us, and we develop psychological patterns as well. But past life patterns do influence us, and we can be drawn to either the same soul or souls again and again, or the same type of people who remind us of those encounters in the past. We as souls tend to internalize our traumas pretty heavily, so when very bad things do happen to us, they have a way of sticking with us, and even though we have a processing period between lifetimes, it's still very hard to let go of things. I feel like it's something we take for granted, that even though our souls are eternal, moments are not eternal. They're very transitory, and everything comes to an end. So every moment in a past life still sits with us and matters to us. So the people we lost, the things that happened, the parts of ourselves we lost, we can have a hard time really accepting that those events occurred, or that we had those losses, or that we failed, or we let someone down, or that we were betrayed, or whatever happened. They think about times in your life, not too much, just lightly reflect on a time in your life now that you've been hurt, and anytime that happened in a past life, that was real, it happened, and it really affected you. And so I'm sure you know how hard it is to let something go that happened in your current lifetime. In the past, it's no different. Even though we take time to reflect on things, some things are very difficult. And these kind of become the root of our patterns. And we can have positive patterns as well, but obviously, because I'm a healer, I tend to work on the negative ones to help people kind of improve, change, and be able to engage their current lifetime with more happiness. So that's kind of my perspective on why that is. And again, how to not do it again is really just being aware of it, facing it, and healing it. There are many ways to heal these things. I know my way, which is what I want to talk about. So I appreciate all of you being here and sharing so openly in the comments. Today I wanted to make a special offer. Normally I do not read about past lives outside of my past life program called Soul Seeker, where we learn about our soul and our destiny by exploring our past lives. Today I want to make that available. So for my normal reading rate for clairvoyant readings, which is $160 an hour, I am offering not only a reading but a healing to address your multi-lifetime relationships. I would suggest focusing on one or two people, although we can discuss exactly what you want to address in that session to resolve it. I have done this work many times, so I know that I can fully resolve one or two people in that time frame. And I will also advise on how you can do that for yourself. There is an additional discount for those of you who book through Facebook and pay through PayPal. Otherwise, you can go through my website and book it as a regular clairvoyant reading and specify that you want to look into your past lives. I know how liberating it can be to resolve these, even if it's only one relationship or one pattern you resolve. In fact, frequently it's good to kind of only do one at a time so that we can acclimate to that shift. I also encourage empowerment of you. So know also that if you don't want the help, that is totally fine, and that anything in us can be resolved with daily, consistent spiritual practice. It takes a long time to do it that way, but you can work through many of the issues that you are carrying and reach a greater state of wholeness. So there is an option for everyone. Let's see. Kristen asks, how many lives do we live? It's actually different for everyone. Part of what I do in my past life program is talk about how many past lives there are. Each of us is on our own journey, and we reincarnate at different rates. And of course, our lives are different lengths. Kind of coming up with an average for this is a bit of a misnomer, but I would say about 60 lifetimes is an average. I've met people with as few as 9 lifetimes, and people with as many as several hundred, which is a lot. And of course, time is not entirely linear, so you get lifetimes that are backwards or forwards or on other planes. The spiritual world is very vast and complicated. That honestly doesn't come up very often. Most of us exist in a linear timeline and have had about 50 or 60 lifetimes. When I read for you, because the nature of this particular special, we're not going to get into how many lifetimes you have. We are going to focus very much on your past life love connections and your relationship patterns and bringing those to a resolution. Tamanda asks, is there a way not to come back to Earth? This is also highly individual, and it does reflect my personal views and experiences. Is that every soul has a destiny, and when you fulfill your destiny, you can also think of it as like a lesson or a task you're meant to accomplish that brings you closer to your potential. You will no longer incarnate here, you will reincarnate elsewhere. And depending, some people ascend, some people return to what they were doing before, some people reincarnate and start having lifetimes in a different space in the spiritual universe. So again, highly individual, but that's typically how you don't come back here in particular. Hello everyone. All right, so that reflects kind of my experience. And that's a little bit about why this topic matters and what I'm offering to help you through it. Now, I think at this point, maybe I'd like to share a bit of my personal experiences in this. It is a very interesting topic, learning about my past and my life before this lifetime has really illuminated several things for me. Learning about my past has shown me not only who I am as a soul, but why I am here on this plane at all, and why I am drawn to the people I am drawn to and the relationships I've had with them, why I as a person am the way I am, my patterns, my mistakes, my strengths, and so on. And it's given me a real sense of roots and like I belong in the greater scheme of things, knowing kind of the path your thread travels through the tapestry of everything. We can take faith for granted, but it does lend a sense of solidity to our existence. I do see some people asking if they have known certain people in a past life. If you would like to explore this, I am offering as a special. I normally don't read past lives outside of my program. Is that for the rate of my regular clairvoyant readings, I will read about your past life soulmates and love connections, people you've had multi-lifetime relationships with, and your relationship patterns. And I will also be doing a healing to help you resolve and release this pattern so you can approach them and approach your life in the present moment rather than responding to what happened, to a pattern. So you can book that through my website as a regular 1 hour reading. It's only for the 1 hour slot because I need at least that much time to do that work with you. Or you can message me directly, and I'm offering a special rate for those who book through Facebook and PayPal instead. So if you're interested and you'd like those answers for yourself, be sure to either visit my website or contact me through Facebook. But anyway, more about my experience in encountering this myself. There have been a handful of people I've met where there is that sense of knowing or feeling like before I pursued my spiritual path, it was a really peculiar sensation where I really didn't understand what I was feeling. So that was really perplexing. The feeling was encountering people. Sometimes it was people I saw one time and never saw again, and sometimes it's people I was friends with or engaged more intimately with. It's like a hyper attraction or just like the urge to stare at them like I feel like I know you, or almost feeling like they're watching you. It was very strange, and I didn't understand what I was feeling until much later when I was on my spiritual path and learned about other past life connections. For example, one of my past life connections is finding out that a fictional character I had been drawing for over 10 years since I was a child is actually a real entity following me, and that we had a relationship that extended a very long time back. And of course, meeting people in this lifetime, like my fiance, whom I have known long, long before this current life. So the feeling is incredible. I hope I'm not being vague, because it is a little hard to put into words. I mean, honestly, it was learning about the character that really, one of the things that spurred my spiritual path. So it was a very important discovery. And learning who my fiance was to me was also a huge turning point in my path. And as I recall the past life memories, and the further I delved into my own soul, I started remembering who other people were in my life, like certain family members and so on, and other people who had come across my life in the past and who I knew presently, and even people I came across at a distance. So you may not necessarily come across these people in person. It could be a long distance relationship, over the internet, relatives, etc. Remembering our relationship before is a very interesting experience, and it really illuminated why our current interaction was the way it was, and helped me to resolve some of my feelings towards them and decide to leave the past in the past and kind of make a decision that reflected what I wanted in the present and how I wanted to move forward. We have a question from Tamanda. She asked, what are our souls exactly, and how are they different from our spirit? Well, this is a little off topic, so I'm going to answer briefly. I use the words spirit and soul interchangeably. At best, I would define spirit as your entire energy body, so your soul and your aura collectively. That would be the only difference. Think of the soul as a candle flame, and the aura is the light emanating from it. That's how I think of those two things before someone asks. What are our souls exactly? They are, the way I perceive them as a healer is that they are, you know, like an atom. There's like a ball in the middle, and then there are other parts that kind of spin around. That's how I perceive the soul. So it is a collection of energy that is organized in a very specific way that enables us to think and to feel and to live in physical bodies and to have instinct and passion and drive, and that makes us everything we are. So it's like the core structure, kind of like the chemical structure of fire that allows fire to exist, and the fire shines the light, and the light we emanate is our aura, which is perceivable generally to intuitives. So that is just my perspective. Again, thank you for the shares, everyone. Jeannie Fritz asks, I felt a heart punch when I laid eyes on a man. I had no clue why I actually felt it. I frequently find that strong gut feelings can be a sign of something more going on energetically. It could be a past life connection, or there's something else going on. Excuse me. And sometimes we just run across these people. They don't stay or become part of our lives. And that can be especially perplexing, because I have had that happen. But there is a reason why, and that is something that I can also address in my readings. So I would trust your feeling, and you yourself can intuitively ask yourself what this feeling means. Hello, hello everyone. So, yes, that's a little bit about me. I hope it's interesting. I realize I haven't shared very much of myself in my videos and my work so far, and I am feeling a strong urge to do so, to talk more specifically about things I've experienced in my journey. So, welcome everyone. I am offering a special today. I normally do not read past life readings outside of my 1 week program, Soul Seeker. So for the same rate as my clairvoyant readings, for a 1 hour slot, I will read specifically on your past life soulmates, your multi-life connections, especially love connections, and your relationship patterns that you're still kind of playing out. And I will do a healing in that time frame as well to help you release, resolve, and heal that pattern. And again, I appreciate those of you sticking around. I know I'm repeating this, but I want to be sure that people who are just joining also hear. So this is kind of like a thank you for joining me today. And because I do want to help and I want to create real transformation, not just tell you information about things, but to really create a strong shift in your energy that likewise creates shifts in your life and creates a change in you and how you respond to your life. So that's why I wanted to offer that today. For those of you who book that appointment through Facebook, you will receive an additional discount. So if you book through my website, clairvoyant.com, just click on booking for a clairvoyant reading and select the 1 hour slot and just add in the memo that you want the past life soulmate reading and healing. And you are welcome to schedule that whenever. This special is only available today. You don't have to have your reading today, but you do have to book the reading today. If you book with me through Facebook and pay through PayPal, I will give you a little bit of a cut for doing it that way. So it is, if you go through my website, lysanderclairvoyant.com, my hourly rate is $160 and includes the past life soulmate reading and a healing to resolve your relationship pattern with 1 to 2 of these people. So I would want to focus on 1 or 2, because that's how much I can resolve for you in that time frame. If you book through Facebook, it'll be $140. So there is a little bit of a discount for those of you who go directly through Facebook and PayPal. Just making sure I'm not missing any questions. I do, some of the things that people are asking don't pertain to this special specifically, but I do offer other services that can address those things as well. So I encourage you to look at my website to read about my services generally. So yes, I'm just kind of reflecting. So we discussed multi-relationships and the various forms that they can come in. It's not just your soulmates, though of course these are the most common to engage in relationships again and again with your soulmates. We have multiple. Your twin flame, for those of you who have them, and your true love connection, which is its own kind of thing. But there are other multi-lifetime relationships that we can have. Sometimes if we have an especially strong connection with another soul in a particular lifetime, for better or for worse, we can create a spiritual bond that keeps us traveling together through lifetimes, repeating the same situation in one way or another over and over. Sometimes it's not literally the situation, it's an emotional pattern. So I've seen some very toxic versions of this where it's really like two people kind of destroying each other through the lifetime. So detaching was for those people, and generally extremely transformative. If you feel like compelled to talk to someone, you're just not able to break it off, even though you know logically that would be sensible, or you and the other people in the situation have these extreme feelings that don't really match the caliber of the situation, there's probably a past life pattern going on. And when you remove the relationship cord and absolve the past life pattern, you'd be surprised how different you can feel afterward, especially how little you could potentially feel about the other person, where you don't obsess over them, you feel no compulsion to talk to them, and it's like really being liberated. You aren't compelled to think of them all the time, and when you do happen to think of them, you don't really feel much of anything. So someone asked about a forgetting spell. I explained earlier why I don't particularly recommend that, but that actually doing this past life healing and removing that relationship connection can effectively have a similar effect where you just aren't really affected by that person anymore. For some people, that result is immediate most of the time, and sometimes it takes a few weeks for that to settle. Because even with a past life connection, we still have a psychological component where we're in a habit, but it's a lot easier to overcome without that spiritual component. Diane says, an old partner rung up to see me after 40 years. Wow, that is incredible. Well, there's a good chance that that type of connection may be involved. Of course, there may be other factors at hand, but that is incredibly interesting. I can think of a few people who I know and who I myself am engaged with on some level, or that could possibly be a thing where it doesn't matter how much time has passed, the person never quite leaves your mind. All right, so we also talked about how you know someone is a past life connection. There's just that feeling of compulsion, or like you know someone, an instant kismet, for better or for worse, just a very strong draw or sense of familiarity. We talked about how to resolve past life relationship patterns and live in the present. The first step is being aware of them, and some emotional work and resolving that is needed, but that energy healing can either complete that process or bring you most of the way in doing it. I'm trying to think if there's any more personal experiences I'd like to share, overcoming my own patterns. Oh gosh, I've done a lot of the healing work I offer to others. I have done everything I've done to others on myself. So I'm very familiar with my processes, and there were definitely some toxic relationship patterns from before this lifetime that I did a lot of work to resolve. And after years and years and years of experience with myself and other people, I have brought that process down so it's a lot more streamlined. And it's been such an interesting journey. For some of those relationships, it meant letting them go completely. But for some, doing all that healing work really wiped the slate clean and allowed us to start fresh, because the connection there was genuine. And clearing away all that past life stuff really allowed us to connect in the present without bitterness, without all this baggage. And it's a really positive thing. So There are a lot of potential outcomes. It's entirely unique to you, the other person, and your love story, your romance, your mythology together. So I believe that's all I wanted to cover today. I do kind of want to share more about myself, but I'm just not sure exactly where to go, and I don't want to ramble too much more. So again, one more time, as a special offer for all of you, I would like to make past life reading available for single sessions, which is something I don't do. So in a 1 hour session, I would like to address one or two past life soul connections that you have and your relationship pattern with them, and to talk about what that pattern is, where it came from, and more about the special bond you share, whether it's good or bad, the good, bad, the cosmic, because some of you have very extraordinary connections with each other. And in that same time, I want to conduct a healing to resolve that pattern so you can live and connect in the present. So if you're interested in that, contact me directly or book as a 1 hour clairvoyant reading through my website. So thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you for sharing your experiences, for asking your questions. Thank you for sharing your presence. So have a wonderful day, everyone. And just making sure I'm clicking on the right thing. Be blessed.